Welcome everybody to Relationship Matters podcast. We're having empowering conversations about relationships, and I started this podcast for that very reason. There's one thing everybody has in common, and that is we all have relationships. And relationships can be the greatest source of joy in our lives, and they can also be the greatest source of pain. And so I love today. I've been waiting for this for a long time because I have my very own son on the show. I'm just going to read his bio and we're going to jump into this. Justen Gordon is the co-principal at Wentworth Music Education Center in Kelowna, British Columbia. He has degrees in percussion from Berkeley and the legendary UK RSL Oxford program. He is passionate about teaching the next generation of drummers to be great drummers and great humans. He is adored by his students and the parents and is committed to excellence in all areas of his life and his craft. Justen is currently the drummer of Proper Man, whose front man calls him the heart of the band. He has toured extensively throughout North America, shared stages with some of the biggest names, played on the Vans Warped Tour, and made appearances on MTV and Much Music and music videos. And Justen is married to his beautiful wife, Kristen, and is committed to family and being there for family. And the best part of the whole story is that he's my son. And thanks, Justen, for jumping on here with me. I really appreciate it.
You're reading all that stuff off, and I'm like, I'm so old now. I couldn't imagine how you feel.
I know.
Like MTV, there's probably people watching this going like, what is that? Is that like...
Yeah, what is that? Is
an
that
antique show? Is that a show for elderly people? Or thanks for having me on, Dad.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just like so long ago. And for those that Justin and I are just going to have a conversation about family life and about a very transparent one. I'm asking him to be super honest today. Things that I did good, things I didn't do good.
That $5 check clear, or I just
exactly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about those things, but you might think I'm crazy, but we actually let Justen go tour full time when he was like 16 years old with his friends in a band, and they were on the Vans Warped Tour and they did all kinds of stuff. But that just seems like ages ago, right? Like how long have you been married?
It really was.
14 years?
How long I've been married for? I mean, since 2008. So if I'm doing the quick math here, that's a good old 16 years there. Is that correct? Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, I am constantly reminded from my students when I present them any sort of music, and they're like, oh yeah, that's classic rock. And I'm thinking, this is like Blink-182. What do you mean classic rock? Apparently the stuff you listen to is actually called grandpa rock. I just learned about that recently. So
really?
That's kind of cool. Yeah, so being in music education,
I like grandpa rock.
Well, yeah, you're gonna have to, because that's pretty much it for what you're listening to now. But yeah, no, I honestly, it was a trip back then, like, and to have the opportunity to do that, where a lot of parents would be like, absolutely not. I think maybe I just played drums so much at home that mom finally said, yeah, like, go do it somewhere else. But no, I was super fortunate there, because not a lot of parents would not only just like say yes to something like that, but actually support them in many facets to be able to do that, right? To kind of like make music their life.
Our prayer life certainly went up, and we were, there's lots of days we were nervous, but I think that right out of the gate here, that's a great point, Justen. I think that parents need to support their kids' dreams and facilitate them.
Yeah.
A lot of parents will live vicariously through their kids, and sometimes they put pressure on them to perform and do things that they want them to do. But really what we should be doing as parents is really helping them facilitate what they have in their hearts to do. I often teach that in my parenting course. I never wanted to tell you couldn't be something, or that you had to be something. I wanted you to pursue what was in your heart.
And I really at no point in my life had that pressure to be something or live, fulfill some kind of destiny that you or mom had for me. It was always just like, what do you want to do? You got to wake up every morning and look yourself in the mirror and make sure that you're doing what you love and what you're passionate about, which is a big part of my mentorship program here teaching is, find your passion and see if you can find a career out of that passion and combine those two things, because without that, there's just too many people having careers or in careers where they're doing it to just facilitate other areas of their life, but they have no passion with it. That's, you know, you only get so many days on this earth. You know, how many of those days are you going to spend stressed out, hating your job, or, you know, aspects of life like that, rather than pursuing what you love to do and having more joy in your life? I mean, I don't know. I know life is not perfect. It's going to throw you curveballs, and there's so many things out of our control. But the one thing that I find that we could at least make an attempt to try to do is to pursue our passions and find a career aspect to those passions, or at least make it so that it's a viable thing in our life that we're doing at the very minimum 50-50. Yeah, I find that also, and we'll talk about this further, but it's, you know, that can kind of get kiboshed really quickly because of what kids are being told. And I'll give all some secrets on what kids are telling me in kind of how to talk to them and what they're thinking about right now these days.
Yeah. So okay. So let's we're going to jump into that in a few minutes, but I want to just hear. There might be people, my listeners, that are kind of interested in. You got any tour stories that are like just ridiculous or crazy that you know? Here's this young guy out on tour. Anything scare the pants off you, or anything kind of you know? I mean, everybody I think sees it as glamour and, you know, like, oh, I get to be on stage and all this kind of stuff, but it's a grind. Like, it's a grind. I remember you telling me one time your band's budget for food was like 67 cents a day or something.
I think that was just the people I was in the band with. We're very proud of that. I don't know if it was some kind of like thrift store mindset or something. I mean, listen, when we were super young touring, we had our 15 passenger van, our 7 by 14 foot trailer, and that was it. And our musical gear, and so, you know, when we first pushed out east to try to make the band work and try to get shows and try to start up, you know, we really had this mindset that we had to set up our own tour across Canada and make as many friends as humanly possible. Because if you're going to tour a country like Canada, there's not a ton of cities in between. It's a lot of small towns and there's a lot of distance. And sometimes straight up, even just having the gas to get you from town to town is important. So yeah, we had to be pretty creative from time to time early on. It got better over time, but yeah, for sure, there was weeks where we were figuring it out, and, you know, all those, you know, times going with mom to the grocery store kicked in, kind of all of a sudden going from passive mindset to, I got to figure this out pretty quick because we don't have a ton of money to do this. But, you know, with some of the other tours and artists I've played for, it's been a lot cushier now. But the teenage thing was very real. That was crazy. As far as like crazy stories, I mean, I don't know. I remember one night we were driving. I was in the passenger seat. Remember, it's a 15 passenger van. The nose of that thing is extremely small. I'm in the passenger seat with my feet up on the dash, and I think Ryan or Barry was driving. And we're in Northern Ontario. Now, if you've ever driven through Northern Ontario, it's basically 16 hours of driving through a one-way lane each way, curved road, no mountains, but just tons of lakes and trees. So with tons of lakes and trees, lots of, is it meese or mooses? I don't know what the plural is there. Anyway, a moose found his way up onto the highway. And I remember whoever was driving kind of snapped. It was like, oh my, and I opened my eyes and I was just about to basically look like, you know, when those people wear moose hats, they got the little hat with the moose horns on it. Yeah. That would have been me on top of the moose, because I literally, his head came out off the side of the road. We're doing 130, 140. And miraculously, must have been one of those prayer nights you had. He just missed. Otherwise, I would have been literally I guess a human hat for a moose instead of a moose hat for a human. Anyway,
I can't imagine how many twist poles you guys had on the road. Like you logged like thousands and thousands of miles.
We logged tons. It got to the point near the end of touring with them where I was just trying to get every piece of Highway 1 driven. And I think I accomplished that. I think there's some parts of Newfoundland I haven't quite finished off yet, but I've between Halifax and Victoria, I've driven every part of Highway 1 at some point in my life. It helped that Ryan had, I think, an eye issue where like driving at night affected him, and Barry just liked to sleep. So logging the hours was real for me. And the craziest thing I ever probably did, and I never told you and Mom this because, you know, that would have been bad news. I drove 26 straight hours, and that was a trip from Winnipeg, I think, all the way somewhere to Kingston or close to Montreal, and we had to haul. There was no stops, so I did that. That was a grind, but yeah.
Crazy.
As far as like on-show stuff, there's just typical craziness. Like I think people don't realize with tours is that when you go to a show, for instance, in your town, band rolls in, you do the show. Yeah. It's a fun party night. It's the night you let loose. It's the night you go out and have fun with your friends and do crazy stuff and whatever. But that for us is like, it's every night. And so sometimes most of the time we're just exhausted or we're just tired, right? And we got to be the life of the party because people are there for us or people are there for someone that we're touring with or whatever. And so kind of always having to be on. So it's not so much like what's the craziest moment. I mean, there are some stuff that I can't even get into on this podcast or any others really but there's stuff where you've walked in and you're like, what is going on here? Like, what are you all doing? Warped Tour would have been some of the craziest memories. You know, but it's a war of attrition, both mentally and physically. Right. You're constantly fighting.
So that's a great lesson, right? That's a great lesson.
That's just like if you want. Yeah, I think the glamour of it. Listen, if you're passionate about music, that 45 minutes on stage offsets the 23 hours and 15 minutes of everything else you have to deal with, whether that's sleeping awkwardly. And listen, I slept on tour buses. I have done even when I went out with Jay on the rap tour and stuff with French Montana and stuff, Chris Brown. And when I was out on tour, that $1,000 hotel rooms every night, like, or not every night, but most nights, and, you know, flying and doing this and doing that. It's like, even with that, and I thought, man, this is going to be great. I finally am not doing, the 15 passenger van, or I'm beyond a tour bus now. Every time we upgraded to another level, it was still a war of attrition mentally and physically. It doesn't change whether you're touring or what. However, again, it's just the desire and the passion to play. So whenever you go see a show, most of the time you're watching people. Not everyone, but most people, you're watching them and they're very passionate and acutely aware of how passionate they are at what they're doing, because it might be show one, but they've been doing 3 weeks of production and they've already been working their butt off. And I'm talking like, hours upon hours a week. Or they're at show 37 and they've been doing this for months. So yeah, I want to say sacrifice. Obviously some bands get compensated well and all that jazz, but yeah, you got to really love it.
The point is, you started off when you started talking today is that, to pursue your purpose and marry it with but what's in between all of that is a lot of hard work, a lot of drive, a lot of having to do stuff you don't want to do necessarily, but you got to do. And so that's really good. Yeah. The other thing of course, is relationships and the band and who's traveling, the crew and all that. And know as well as I have, some of those relationships were strained and were difficult when you're with people in, every day, all day, it's a grind. And so you got to, it's important to keep your relational health. And I know you've learned from that in the current band you're in. Your guys' number one goal isn't just the music and the performance. It's actually being brothers in arms. It's being connected and preserving those relationships and protecting those relationships. I think when you were younger, you didn't know that was important. And I hadn't written a book by
then. No, totally. Or it's exactly. It's actually, we actually just all read your book and just based our entire band off of that. No, I to be honest, I never expected first of all, even just getting back into the music industry, I tried the session drummer thing, and I did all that, and that really brought me no joy. The money might have been better, but again, we all know, and I'm sure people who have watched or listened to your podcast, money's not going to solve anything. It can solve some stuff practically here or there, but it's not the fulfillment factor at all. So doing the session thing felt listless, if you will. It was more of just the transaction. I do what I'm good at, or what I'm meant to do, or whatever, and you move on. But it's a reason why I teach, right? Like, again, I'll get into that a bit, but with this band, they sounds so like a Lionel Richie song. They kind of taught me how to love again, or care, or have chemistry, or give to a project, or be in a project where I thought I was done with that. I had trust issues. I did. And I'm not going to get into all that, but it was really just in how things ended and all that jazz. It's just, I had trust issues, and I thought all I'm going to do is I'm going to get into something like this again, and then I'm going to end up in the same spot. I just assumed that was. So, so these guys really, Jason, Travis, Nori, Petri, they taught me how to really care, and taught me about what a real brotherhood is. And it's been an insane, it does not feel like 3 years. It's just so fast.
It seems to me like you're all learning it together. Like, it seems like you guys are learning this together, because I think they've all had experiences, right? Sure. And so, and you're all you're all accomplished in what you do besides music. And so, to find the time to, you don't find it, you make it, and all that, but you guys have really committed to relationship and connection, and you don't let things go under the bridge for too long before you address something with each other, or call each other out and stuff like that. So that's a really important piece.
Well, it's just that, I mean, I can speak for myself. I never try to speak for others in any way, shape, or form. I feel strongly that they are the same way. But I mean, for me, if there was ever an issue with any of them individually, I 1000% feel comfortable and confident in talking to them, and that, something would be, fixed if there was ever an issue. But the crazy thing is, even in 3 years, it's just been like, I don't know, you never want to say the thing where you're waiting for the shoe to drop or something, but I feel like I tell this, here's an old person reference here for you. I feel like I'm playing Nintendo with a Game Genie attached. Like, that's what it feels like to be in this band. I feel like I'm playing with cheat codes, because I mean, we have our own venue, so I never have to pack my drums up. First of all, that's, I mean, goodness gracious. Rehearsals are always at the same place. We just have a consistent basis. Our communication is insanely good. Our ability to see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. And you know what? The cool part is, a lot of our differences come sometimes from a musical standpoint and what we want to see in the song, but no one ever really hijacks anybody else's parts. So they do leave me to come up with drum parts and be creative. And Petri is king of guitar parts, and Jason is lyrics and song structure, maybe, or melodic structure, and Nori comes up with incredible bass lines, and then Travis is our music engineer, and it's just it's really cool. I've done a full album with them, and we're working on an EP right now, and it's just, I don't know, I can't think of a single time where I was just I
think that's another,
which is crazy.
Yeah, this is a good segue into the family talk, though, because sure. that each person in any family, organization, or group, each person brings what they can contribute to it, and they honor somebody else's contribution. They don't get threatened by it. They don't get insecure by it. So a healthy family recognizes each person's role and each person's part, but they also cheer each other on in their parts. But and so that's a great segue. So Justen, what I want to talk a little bit about now is just the family dynamic that we had. And
sure.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then let's just be very honest and open, and so that people can learn from us. That's the key. I've always been very transparent, because my mistakes might help somebody else avoid them. It also might encourage somebody to see that, hey, a guy can make a lot of mistakes. You said something to me very profound a few years ago that really brought some healing to my heart. And that was, you said, very simply, you said, you don't remember the bad dad, you only remember the good one. That blessed my heart. But, you know, there was still, in my healing journey, there was still some pieces that, you know, every parent messes up. So, and every kid messes up. So talk to me a little bit about what were some things that Mom and I did good that you've kind of taken and carried forward into your marriage now. Is there some things that kind of jump out at you?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, the thing that it was a sense, like, the communication was always really good. I mean, albeit sometimes fiery here and there. One thing that a lot of people don't like to navigate is, like, they don't like to navigate being emotional or allowing logic and emotion to exist or coexist. Like, they don't know how to manage it. So generally people, especially if you're a conflict or anything like that, they'll just repress it, right? They just internalize it. I never felt like that at home. We always had something, I don't want to say sitcom levels of, like, something was always solved by the end of the evening or something, and some jazz music started playing in the background or something. Anyway, but we always had communication and transparency. So that was one thing that really helped early on, as far as, like, how I perceived, like, what life should be like. Mom was extremely, I mean, I'm a mama's boy. We both know that, obviously. Her and I had a really special connection with just, you know, she was fiercely protective of me in my ability to achieve my goals. Listen, in 17 years, I've taught tons of kids whose moms are asking, and dads, and they're good moms and dads, don't take this away, but they're like, okay, do we have an electronic kit solution? Can they have some headphones on? And here I am in 95, aging myself, 95 or whatever, wailing away on an acoustic drum kit. And we didn't have the biggest houses in the world growing up. And it was like, Mom just tanked it. She just, and I know why, because she wanted me to continue to improve and do what I could do to the best of my abilities. And it worked. Without those hours, throw all of the education and academic things that I've done aside, and the tours and all that, those hours and hours I logged before in Salmon Arm, before we, you know, I ever moved up drumming wise or whatever, was the only reason that I wasn't only passionate about what I did, but, like, was able to refine it and kind of have a sense and an identity with it. And so my mom, you know, Mom allowed that. And you were always supportive of it as well. And it was just, I just know specifically and acutely that Mom was at home having to deal, because I know it had to be A, loud, and B, it wasn't even just headphones either, right? Like, I was blasting music and then blasting the music louder because I was drumming too loud. And, you know, because I hit so quietly, obviously on drums, I'm a very quiet drummer, so I didn't have to.
You're a heavy hitter.
So I you know, those hours, those mean maybe the most to me, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not even just like, well, it was just a week of my life that I really sucked it up or was there for my son. It was like years, day in, day out. You know how much I played. I didn't stop.
Well, we absolutely never had to tell you to practice.
What's that?
Not once did we ever have to tell you to go practice.
No. And it became the thing that helped me with even the academic side and the school side, because, you know, in order to be able to play and stuff, Mom always still kept it that, you know, get your schoolwork done, get everything else done. And then when I struggled in school early on in grade 6, 7 and stuff, she went out of her way to find me a tutor and get the right tutor. And I don't know if you remember Lorene Vandenberg, like eons ago back in Sound Farm. She helped me, and then she was a big reason why I was, you know, had an easy time the rest of school years. So, you know, Mom was always just looking out, how can I help him? How can I make him the best version of himself? How can I allow him to be who he needs to be? Yeah. Parents don't always do that, right? And again, this is not a let's, you know, hate on other parents. I think it comes from maybe a misunderstanding, or sometimes it's hard to focus because a lot of people have a lot of stuff going on, and or the communication isn't clear, which I bring it back to full circle now. It's the communication was so clear in our family. I'll be it, sometimes it wasn't great communication in the sense of like it was, we were all mad at each other or whatever. But you have to allow that. People are going to be angry or hurt or whatever, but it's the matter of talking it through. And that's the most successful thing in relationships is communication, as far as I'm concerned. So no matter, the good day, bad. Exactly. And no one was repressing anything. No one was doing, so yeah, that was one of the biggest things. The other thing, obviously, providing for the best way you guys knew how and did, and the support, some of the sacrifices you guys had to make to pull off, even me getting on tour, some of the things, helping me to get my first drum kit, my second kit, my third kit, things like that. Again, it's not even just we believe in him, he can do it. It's like, no, let me support you. Let me be there for you. Let me get this figured out. Same thing with hockey while I was doing that. That wasn't mom's area. That was you and I. The big support there was hockey. I was always proud that you were my dad at hockey games too. I mean, I always am, don't get me wrong. But at hockey games, especially because there's so many like drunk dads that were yelling and just being complete redacted here. You were always chill in the background, mind your own business. You were just there to watch me and support me. Never embarrassed me once, never anything like that. We had good talks after, good talks for, even if it was a 5 a.m. practice or if it was, trips to Logan Lake or whatever for hockey tournaments and all the way up to the national sports school level. You were just always there, always supportive. So, that stuff sticks with a person for their life. Do you know what I mean? So even as I'm pushing 40 here, that stuff still almost like crystal clear in my head, some of those memories. So
I think it's important. That's a good lesson for parents to take away from this conversation is just, don't be passive in your support. I call it facilitating. I actually used you as an example in my parenting course I teach. And I just say like, when you played hockey, you're a goaltender. I could get you the equipment. I could drive you to practice. Mm-hmm. I could cheer you on. I could, debrief with you after. But the one thing I couldn't do is go play on the ice for you. And you had to do that. You had to put the work in. You had to put the practice in. And it's so important to realize that parents, we can't do it for our kids. We need to facilitate that they do it so that they learn how to make good decisions. So they learn discipline, so they learn passion and pursue their passions. When Justin, you were little, you used to tell me I'm going to play in the NHL. We used to pretend you were in the NHL when we would play down the hallway and stuff. And you always thought I was going to be a goaltender in the NHL. I never once told you that you weren't going to make it. Now, I always believed if you were going to make it, you could make it if you really wanted to. Lots of things against that. I could have pointed out that there was only 2 goaltenders for every team and so on and so forth. But I didn't want you to ever doubt that you could achieve something. And so I never told you that you couldn't do it. And so that was the foundation.
And I carried that. I believed that I could all the way up until my senior year when they started bringing those 6'5" kids from Quebec over. That was the moment I knew that the jig was up, but it wasn't from what my dad told me or anything like that. So no, you're absolutely right. Once I saw some of those dudes, I was like, I think the old Curtis Joseph, Kurt McLean, 90s goalies that were 5'10", 5'11", 6 feet. Cause I was like 6 foot but no, 6'6". No, sorry. They just like knelt down on the ice and got the whole map. But you're right. I always believed all the way up until I made the decision or realized, you know what, this is what I want to pursue. Right. Keep in mind too, whilst you're doing all of that, but not playing on the ice, I had built a responsibility to myself from everything that you had done to play the best. So all the dry line training, all the wind sprints, all the stuff that we, doing lines and stuff like that, all the stuff we didn't you don't like to do as a goalie or as a skater, period. I put the extra work in to get it to that level because I had a responsibility to you, not from a pressure point, but from a respect level that we had for each other and everything that you had done for me.
Right. That's a great point. We had mutual honor and respect, and I think that that carries a long
Sure.
ways. So what's the one thing out of
Absolutely.
which is what we just talked about you've carried into your marriage with Kristen? Because you guys have a great marriage. I'm really proud of you two. You get along. You got such a nice rhythm to your marriage and everything. What is the one thing that you think stands out in your marriage that you carried forward from family?
I mean, we're both on the same page in communication. I mean, no one's the thing with Kristen and I is like we're very similar in our decisions life wise. And that's why it worked out to begin with. Major decisions that we made in our life. Communication is number one. No one has a competitive spirit or attitude towards the other one. So
Right.
we don't get like, even when we have, let's say, like an argument, like I missed the hamper, or it sounds very 1955, or I forget to do something, or I screw something up, or just miss it, or vice versa. No one gets out of bounds with anything. No one takes things personally in the marriage. No one's competitive with the other person. If Kristen, and Kristen's done extremely well with her careers, recently she's gone from a pretty small job and working her butt off to like now in a head office position with the government. So she's done all that. I've cheered her on every second. I mean, and if it ever came to it, Jason, don't listen to this part. If it ever came to it and we needed to facilitate something for her and we had to move or something, I would seriously consider it. No questions asked. I'm her biggest fan and she's my biggest fan. So it's like, we're there for each other. I think the biggest thing in our marriage is just that, like, it's like, no, I got you, or no, well, I got you. And really, and then you couple that with communication. It's pretty, I don't know.
Yeah, you serve each other, right? That's the greatest thing for your mom and I is that we look for ways to serve each other and to bless each other. Yeah. And I think that's such a simple thing, but it's just so integral to having a healthy relationship. And I think a lot of people miss it. They're looking for the big romantic gestures or the big things. Now there are times we do that, but it's the everyday I serve you. I want to facilitate. It's actually kind of the same thing, isn't it? We facilitated for you. Now you facilitate for your wife. And if you had kids, right? Your cats, you facilitate.
Our cats, yeah.
But look at what you're doing for my grandkids and your niece and nephew. You facilitate for them. And so I think that's a really good legacy piece that people could take away from. So, listeners, grab a hold of this one. Like, healthy communication and serving one another is going to get you to a healthy relationship, whether it's a band, an organization, or a family. Those are principles that just work. So Justin, tell me about something that we didn't do well that could have been improved on, that you feel like that one was a bit of a stinger. And we can be open and transparent because we have a healthy relationship, so it's not like you're going to surprise me with anything. But I think it would be good for the viewers to understand that I'm a relationship expert because I messed up, not because I am a book smart guy. It's because I've learned how to have relationships. But what are some things that we could have maybe done a little bit better as parents?
I mean, I guess one of the passive things, and we've talked about this before, one of the passive things, I call it passive because I don't think it was ever intentional, because it would make no sense for it to be intentional. One of the passive things that happen constantly is because you help so many people, sometimes it was like I felt second to the people you were helping. And because I was around some of those people due to the youth groups or the music stuff that we were doing early on, it was kind of like there was days where I had to really just remind myself, like, okay, like, he's there for me for hockey and for other things and stuff. Because it was like, always felt like there was somebody that you had to help. And sometimes I just wanted it to be me, not help, but just be there. Yeah. So I know that there's some sacrifices there on that side. For a while, I had the thing of like being in ministry. I know you don't make a ton of money. And for me, I thought, because before all that, you were in business and stuff. And I always thought, like, man, like, why doesn't he go back into that and make money, and then we can have more of it to do what we want and do things? And why is he doing this? I always felt like you were sacrificing us to do this ministry thing. Obviously bad perspective on my end. But that's just where as far as what I was feeling when I was that age. So that's another thing, was just like that part of the communication and what you were doing wasn't 100%. As good as the communication was amongst our family, everything else, that one aspect of it was like, I didn't fully understand. And
no, I can totally own that one, because a lot of times people's crisis would get in the way of our, because the view is like, our family's great. We got great relationships. I take you to hockey. You can easily make an excuse and say, these people are in real need. I need to go over here. And to be honest, I was still in my healing journey when you were young. So what was happening, I think a little bit, was I was getting something out of it. I needed to be needed. And I know that eventually God dealt with that in me, but it was like I needed to be needed somehow. And so I couldn't say no. And it was partly insecurity, and it was partly that need to be needed thing. And so when you can't say no, when you don't say no to everyone else, you don't say yes to your children or to your family. And so that's a really, really good point, son. That's a really good point, because I can own that one. I've taken responsibility for it. But that's a great message for the listeners, in the sense that, listen, don't get so busy. I hear stars who have 3 nannies for their kids say, I work this hard for my family. They never see their family. Now, I wasn't that bad, but you know what I'm saying? Like, listen, don't make excuses, especially dads. Don't make excuses that you're working hard for the family and making money for the family, when that's not what it is. It's feeding something inside you. Now, that's not to say we don't work hard. It's not to say that we don't make sacrifices, but we want to make sacrifices together as a family. And so, that as you got older, that's what I think you and the girls came to understand, your sisters, is that we were in this together. And so that needed to be communicated better.
Yeah. And I think that's where, because of the lack of communication in that regard, it was like, we didn't feel like we were in it together. I felt like, I remember telling Mom a few times, like, I wish I was one of the, messed up people that Dad was working with sometimes, like, which is a weird and backwards thought. Obviously, some of these people were going through insane stuff. I didn't have full comprehension of it either, but
of course.
So just, the communication. But the other thing and the other aspect, and it took me probably until my 30s to realize, like, you don't get to a certain age and you're like, I'm perfectly better, everything is good, or I can just hit autopilot, or the autopilot, it'll end up like one of those Tesla cars. It'll catch fire and crash itself into a bridge or something. Like, you can't just go in autopilot in your life. You're constantly getting better. You're constantly building. And whether it's physically or mentally that you're improving yourself, you always should be pushing to improve. And so, for you, you're trying to heal, you're trying to get back, you're trying to improve. And then you're also probably acutely aware of what your life was like before. And you might have even had an aspect of, I want to make up for what I did.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about that before. So you have all this stuff going on, basically juggling 9 balls in your head. And I'm sitting here going, like, I'm complaining. Again, I think a lot of, and it's not to say you guys are perfect parents, I get that. It's like, I think a lot of it too is just a lack of understanding due to my age or my maturity at the time.
Well, so, in some ways, I mean, we try to protect you, right? Like, we don't want you knowing some of these stories of these kids. I was always transparent about my story, but, like, you didn't need to hear about abuse and all these things that these kids were facing. And I was, and so I felt like I needed to show them love, extravagant love of a father or dad figure. And now, in hindsight, I can see where you kids, you and your sisters might have been thinking, hey, how come he doesn't express that much love to us? and I did it. No, totally. In my mind, I was doing it by taking you to hockey, by doing all these little things. But the fact is I can own it. I did not communicate love to you guys in the same passion as I did these broken kids that were hurting. Yeah. And that's another great lesson for a moment. That's a good lesson for listeners. Like, don't assume your kids know how you feel about them. Don't assume that they think that that they know what you think. tell them constantly how much you love them and be passionate about it. Show them that you love them, right? And tell them, but not just show, tell them.
I think also, I think that
Go ahead.
learning, two things on that. One is learn your kid's love language. Like you can't, I think some people have children, and again, I'm coming from a place where I don't have kids, so I'm careful with what I say here. But from 17 years of teaching kids, learn your kid's love language and know that the kid that you created isn't going to be exactly like you are, or have your baggage, or have some of these things that you have. Your kid might be wildly different than you. So learn about them, let them develop, and then learn about them and who they are, and understand that they're going to change mentally. They're going to go through ages where they're interested in 70,000 things a day, and everything's different the next day. And it's learn their love language, learn what speaks to them, because I think sometimes what gets misunderstood, and again, I know this is for the last part, but too many times it's like parents mean well. Parents really mean well, but they're not listening to their child. They're not listening to their kid. And sometimes the kid doesn't know how to say it either. You got to remember, it's like, as a kid, you feel like you're screaming, but there's no sound coming out, or you're trying to yell it, but you can't explain it. So, as the adult, as the person who's gone through X amount of years of life, you have to really sit down and just kind of watch them and understand them, and don't try to make them into your image, because it just does, it takes their identity away, and it also furthers, it furthers the lack of communication or will to communicate with you more than you know. Yeah, sorry, I kind of segued into the last.
No, that's good.
It's just one of those things.
So that was the last. You're referring to the last thing. Let's just do that. What I asked Justen to do today was to talk about, because he works with 100 students. He's got 8 different ages talking to him all the time, from children to young adults, about life. In fact, quite often some parents bring them in and say, don't teach them drums today, just have a life talk with them, or tell them about to do their homework or whatever, because their kids listen to you. And so they know, and the parents know that, so they're trying to help. So I just thought this would be great insight. So in addition to what you just said, what are some things that you've learned working with kids? Because they're going to tell you things they'll never tell their parents. So what is one sound takeaway for today for parents, in addition to what that was really good what you just said.
Yeah. So the biggest part is exactly what I said. Learn your kids' love language, understand them, let them be them. Know that they're not going to share everything with you. Sometimes it's just flat out of a straight out embarrassment to them, or they think it is. Their relationship is going to evolve. I find that parents who do it right, and I know many out there, I know y'all are watching. There are great parents out there, and I encourage even the parents, when I get a chance to, that allow their kids to be them. There's a perfect example. I'll just use them. I know they'll be cool with it, but I have a student, Jonah. He's in a band called Freeze the Fall. And he just performed at Crown. He's like one of the only bands that we've allowed to play at Crown and Thieves. And he's doing it. He's in a band. He's 14. And his parents are fully behind him. And, there's going to be aspects where Jonah wants to be his own guy and be cool, or, and be that guy. And I always encourage parents going, like, you're doing the right thing. Keep going, because even if the kid goes a little bit and has their independence run, they always ultimately come back, and mom and dad become cool again. I'm sure they're always cool. Krista, Rennie, you guys are awesome. But I just, I see it all the time where the parents are so worried, not these guys now, I'm just talking about parents in general. They get so worried that, what if my kid doesn't find me cool? Or what if my kid doesn't want to hang out with me? Or what if my kid isn't doing what I want them to do? And I'm like, well, that's going about it all wrong, right? And I will say this, kids are way smarter than I think that they let on, right? Because sometimes parents will come to me, and they'll come to me with a point that I'm like, it's not that remedial, like it's not that basic, it's not that simple or easy. Your kid is already very aware of what's going on, and you need to allow them to be them and learn about them. And if it's cringe, or whatever the kids use as terms right now, if it's lame, if it's whatever, let them go through that phase as well. Just be there for them. because they need to go through all these phases. You got to remember, and we forget about this as we get older. And I'm, I get constant reminders of this as in my job, is that, the worst time of most people's life is high school, junior high and high school. That age is just so brutally tough. And you factor in the level now where if you are bullied, you can now be bullied around the clock. It's not just at school. Now you can be made fun of online. You can have this, and you got all these pressures and all these other things. And these kids are just trying to figure out who they are. Yeah. And the crazy thing is they won't really fully put that together until they're probably into their 20s or beyond. And they'll find pieces along the way, but that pressure of what school are you going to? What do you want to do with your life? What do you want? Like, what's this? What's that? And some of them just want to, again, it's that screaming into the void. Like, I don't know. And they need to be told, it's cool. No worries. Let's figure this out together over time, but there's no rush. That lack of pressure, you're pulling that break, because it's like strapping what high school and that age does. Their emotions and everything else that's going on, it's like they've strapped themselves to the front of a Formula One car and told the driver to gun it. Except for they didn't tell the driver to gun it. They didn't have a choice in this. They're just going full speed. That's a scary thought process if you put yourself in that position, right? Yeah. And it just is endless. And so the pressure builds up. And so now you get kids at a young age trying to cope. And I mean, if you're already at a young age and you've learned coping mechanisms, well, that's not really where you want to be in life, right? So, there's aspects of development that should be good, but coping mechanisms are not always that, if you're developing them that quick, or you're developing them without communication or being able to communicate. So I take my job very seriously in that aspect. Drums is what brings us together, but the mentorship and the brotherhood I have young guy drummers. The age group between it is like, my youngest drummer is little Jude, and my oldest drummer is 63 years of age. And people, it's amazing. Some of the adults that you would think, well, they got it figured out and everything else, they don't. And they confide in me, and they talk to me, and it's good. That's a healthy thing, because sometimes somebody just needs a voice, and sometimes there's just too much pressure to talk to certain types of people. Communicate, awesome. Let your kid be there, and help take the societal pressure off of them. Help navigate through that. And if you don't know how, find them somebody that knows how to help them with that societal pressure and how to handle that and take it off, because you could be the greatest parent in the world and be there for your kid, but it doesn't mean that pressure isn't going to be on their head around the clock. Sure. And taking their phone away and taking them off Instagram and being like, no, and all that doesn't really help, because now they feel like they're being punished for something that is ultimately it's not going to stop them from feeling pressured all the time. It's not going to stop them from feeling this. If they have developmental situations where they need a break from it, that's one thing. But in general, you got to let them be them, and you got to talk to them and let them know that that's normal to feel that way and to feel what they feel, because otherwise the confusion they'll spiral every time.
Yeah. And the other thing is, with Instagram and all that, teach them how to make sure you're the main voice, not Instagram or other TikTok or whatever. Like there's so much information that kids nowadays. You got to be, and the only way to be the most consistent voice is by spending time. I would say quality time happens within quantity time, and having those conversations, like you said, get to know their love language, have those conversations, let them know you're backing them up, that they can come to you with anything. The last piece I'm going to say on this is the one thing I think that you and your sisters, mom and I, have done through the years is we've always held the relationship above everything else. So even if one of us is off the rails or we hold the relationship higher. So that's a good tip for parents as well. Really what you're saying through everything you just said is hold that relationship above, make it the most important thing, not behavior, not other things. Make that connection the most important thing. And I think that's really good. Okay.
Because it's last thing, sorry, just real quick too, is last thing, and the most important thing I maybe should have said, but led with this, be consistent. You're the adult, even if it's hard, be consistent.
Yeah.
Inconsistency. Be transparent, be real, but be consistent with your finding their love language and being transparent with them and finding out who they are. Just be consistent with it. The number one thing I hear from kids all the time is they literally almost to the point where they don't trust what they're hearing. So be consistent. Sorry.
That's really good. That's really good. Okay, let's close this off with one funny memory that you have from growing up in the Gordon clan. What's one thing that pops into your head that was like super funny that happened in our family?
I mean, the first day that I learned that my mom couldn't not snort when laughing was pretty funny. We had a whole thing with that. Sorry, Mom, just threw her absolutely under the bus on that one. No, I can't think of a single, I mean, there's so many funny moments. The day you brought Steve home, that was weird. I didn't realize that we were back into getting pets into the house, but the pet before him would have been Whitey, the Dalmatian that we had there. No,
you had a lot of different people living in the house, that's for sure.
Here's the thing, there was so many funny moments, but I think the biggest thing for me was, and this is part of our life growing up, was sometimes coming home from school and being like, oh, someone new's living with us, or someone is here to be, helped out, or someone, and it's just some of the stories from that naturally were just hilarious. Some of my funnier moments, just playing video games with you or Steve, and growing up, just goofy times. I guess maybe I'm getting too old. I can't think of an acute moment where. What was the funniest moment for you? You're older than I am.
You always, and you still do it to this day when the family gets together. It's a goal to make your mother laugh so hard she almost pees herself. We're crying, whole family's crying. We're laughing so hard, and so that's really funny. So, anyway. That won't mean anything to anybody, but that was a nice memory lane for us.
No, totally. I wish I had some. I should have really. I wish I had I should have called Jaylene before this and asked her or something like that. Hey, what do you got for me? But no, just tons of good moments, tons of laughter. Card nights were super fun with the family. Just that, again, quantity time. There'll always be quality moments. And so we've had lots of quality moments. 100%. Well, thanks, Justen, for coming on today and sharing some of your journey and showing, boy, some of your wisdom and the stuff you said for parenting. This was really good. And even marriage. I hope that people, make notes and have some takeaways from this. But I just really appreciate you. I want to just say here publicly how much I love you and how proud I am of you. You're doing an amazing job with the kids teaching and also your music and band. You're just like a master drummer. And I love listening to you. I remember coming to your shows when it was not so good, but I remember when you were super young, but right out of the gate, you carried the heartbeat of whatever band you were in. And I just love watching you play. It really is an experience. So everybody, if you want to experience that, I want to encourage you, go to propermanband.com and you will see they got music videos. They got music on Spotify. They've got some new stuff coming out that's going to be really good. And then look on their Crown and Thieves. That's part of the it's a speakeasy in the bottom of the, it's the Broken Hearts Club that's in the Crown and Thieves building in West Kelowna. And they play Saturday nights, not every Saturday night. So you have to figure out get yourself some tickets, because that is a show to behold, I tell you. If you love music and you love performance, boy, is it ever powerful. Also, listen, if you heard anything today, here's a takeaway for you. Music can help your kids process those emotions. And so get them into lessons. Go to www.wmec.ca. That is Wentworth Music Education Center here in Kelowna. So if you live in Kelowna, go there, sign your kid up for drum lessons or for whatever lessons, get them into music. It's a huge
outlet for them. And as you can hear, it's not just music they learn, they get mentorship as well. And so those are two places you can find Justen, and you can find some help and in that way. So that's really cool. Of course, you can always get me, markgordon.ca. And if you need a speaker, you want to buy a workshop, you want to subscribe to my content, I got lots of new stuff coming out. And so just go to markgordon.ca to find everything out. And thanks for being here. Thanks, Justen.
Thanks, Dad. Love you.
Love you too.